Says the broadcast is live.
We're live. We're live. Let me hit this button, John. We're ready to go. Wonder Twin powers activate. Okay, here we go.
Atomic batteries to power. Turbines to speed.
Ready to move out.
Before we start, I'd like to say something. There's no reason why you shouldn't have complete confidence in your chances to come out of this thing alive and in one piece.
From coast to coast, from border to border, from one end to the other and all points in between. The Classic Guitar Rock Podcast is on.
Yes! That's awesome!
We crank up and break down the great guitar-driven rock of the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And you are invited to come along.
We got a full tank of gas, half a pack of cigarettes, it's dark, and we're wearing sunglasses. Hit it.
And now, your hosts, Jeremy Lunnan and John Dimke.
We've got to protect our phony baloney job, gentlemen. We must do something about this immediately.
It's time for the Classic Guitar Rock Podcast.
Well, here we are, John.
Here we are.
Finally. It's crazy. We were just commiserating. Did you ever think you'd be in your 50s?
I didn't think I'd be in my 50s so quickly.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and you're okay. So are you 52?
Yeah, I'm 52.
52. Okay. So I got 3 years on John, and we're going to talk about Ozzy Osbourne tonight. Woo. Things we're going to talk about. And I want to just right out of the gate to put John right on the spot with no warning. What is your first recollection? And you come from more of a pop background. You've said you were more a pop guy. You weren't really into hard rock. So what's your first recollection of Ozzy Osbourne? I just want to hear your very first memory that you think of.
Okay, so I was a kid. We'd moved from from southern Washington, the Tri-Cities area, down to central Utah. Down to Delta, Utah.
Okay.
But there was no shopping down there. So my mom wanted to go to the mall in Provo.
Okay.
So, of course, my mother's crazy, and we get there before all the stores open.
All right.
So out in front of the ZCMI, which was the Zion's Cooperative Mercantile Institute.
Right.
This was at one time, I think it was a Mormon-owned co-op kind of thing, but it's basically like a Nordstrom or better than a Sears, I think, but it was kind of like a Nordstrom.
Big department store. Yeah.
Big
nice department store. Yeah.
So we're sitting in the mall courtyard by the fountain, and we're the only ones there. And then soon, before the doors open, we saw all these, like, we called them stoner kids came in.
Right.
And these guys had leather jackets on, and they had chains on, and they had, spiked gloves and stuff. And we're like, what is going on? Do these people really need blue jeans at this early in the morning? I think it was like 8 o'clock in the morning. It was early. So the next thing I know is, like, because I have a sense of fairness about me. I think if you're in line early, you should be the first one in the door.
Yeah.
We want to get those blue jeans faster than anybody.
That's right.
So we get to the door, and my mom pulls me back from the door, me and my sister. And the gal inside the store opens the door, and all these stoners rush in past us.
Wow.
And I was like, what is going on here? My sister starts running after them. My mom yells at her, stop,
Right.
And these guys were, the escalators hadn't turned on yet. So these guys were running up the escalators.
Okay.
And I'm like, what are they doing? And the gal at open the door said, this is the first day the Ozzy tickets are on sale.
Ah, okay.
So back in the day before the internet, you had to buy tickets. You could go to grocery store. I bought tickets at a grocery store once, but you had to go to a place that had the terminal to buy the tickets at.
Right. So
all these long-haired kids, a lot of them are adults, long-haired, just ran up past us, and they bought all these Ozzy tickets,
So like what year do you think this was?
1982.
Oh, so this would have, okay, awesome. So this is what we're talking about today.
Yeah.
be talking about. That's great. Yeah. And that's something that, so in Oklahoma, you would go to, I'm sure there were other places, they used to always talk about in Oklahoma City, you could go to Ticketmaster. Well, we didn't have a Ticketmaster.
Oh.
We'd go to the McMahon Auditorium, which was just like an auditorium, but there'd be some little frumpy 60-year-old lady that you'd go up to the little box office and she'd slide the little credit card thing over and you'd buy your ticket. So that's where we'd get tickets.
Yeah.
So all the concerts we'd go to see in Norman, Oklahoma, or Oklahoma City, we'd go to the little McMahon Auditorium in Lawton, Oklahoma, and buy those. But yeah, that's the way it was back then. And you'd have to wait in line. You couldn't.
You'd have to
do
wait
it online.
And if you cut, you might as well, you get shanked.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Well, that's awesome. That is great.
So that was my first, of Ozzy. And then after that, I find out who Ozzy really was. But I was like, who is Ozzy? Right. But I knew that he had enough something to make these stoners get up at 8 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday in a Mormon-owned mall.
That's
Utah.
awesome. That's great. So, well, good. Well, I want to, we're going to talk about Ozzy Osbourne, specifically 40 years ago, actually last night and tonight. So the 26th and 27th of September in 1982 was when Ozzy recorded 2 nights at the Ritz in New York City. And that would become a live album, Speak of the Devil. That's what we're going to talk about tonight. But I had to get your initial reaction, when you were first exposed to Ozzy. That is awesome. So
and if I remember correctly, I don't think I heard his last name for a while.
It was just Ozzy.
It's just Ozzy.
Yeah.
First name like Cher or Sting. It was
one name. Perfect. Ozzy. Okay. Well, when we come back, we are going to dig into this Speak of the Devil album because there's some controversy and there's a lot going on with that album. In fact, the Ozzy camp has pretty much, is disowned the right word? They've pretty much just dismissed that album. And we'll talk about why and it'll be interesting. So we'll do all that right after we come back.
The basement can be a lonely place.
Hello? Is anyone in here?
Yet, at the Classic Guitar Rock podcast, the basement is all that Jeremy and John have. Their wives don't want them geeking out on classic rock in the living room. Can you blame them? But you can help. For as little as $3 a month, you can become a supporter on Patreon. Join today and end the cycle. Visit patreon.com/classic guitar rock. They'll still be in the basement, but at least it's not your basement.
Hello? Is anyone in here?
Such a fine line between stupid and clever.
It's the Classic Guitar Rock Podcast.
You see those professional elements I'm adding?
I am. John? They are. I mean, there is some production value here.
There's some production value there. And of course, jamming it through this low budget StreamYard software just adds a touch, a nice touch.
It's like an 8-track, but with video.
Okay. Hey, you can chime in if you're joining us on what are we on? We're on YouTube, we're on the Twitter, we're on the Facebook.
Yeah, we're live and in public.
And you can chime in with your comments and we'll talk about that. So let's go back 1982. John mentioned 1982 when he saw them at the mall, or saw the folks lining up to buy tickets for Ozzy at the mall. 82 was an interesting year for Ozzy Osbourne. Now, at the beginning of 1982, So this would have been about February. I think the tour started in this would have been the second Ozzy Osbourne album. So let me go back. Wait, I don't mean to get too far off track, but so Ozzy records his first album, and we won't get into the whole how he found Randy and all of that, but he recorded his first album at the end of 79 at a place called Ridge Farm in England, right? So it's Randy Rhoads, it's Bob Daisley. They actually didn't have a Lee Kerslake, the drummer, till kind of at the end. They were just writing songs with just whatever drummers they could catch up. Once they got Lee Kerslake in, he actually helped them write a song or two. Then they recorded the whole song at the end of 79, early 80. So they have this Blizzard of Oz album, and it was a smash in England. So it gets released like in April of 1980 in England or something like that. Well, it doesn't get released in the US, I believe, until like almost a year later. So what's really weird is they did a full tour. Okay, they did a full tour of England, and then they had them go back and start recording Diary like in 1980. So there was a really short window. So basically, without getting into all the nitty gritty, they had 2 full albums in the can before they ever toured in the US.
Wow.
They had 2 albums completely done. So then they come over and they do a quick whirlwind summer fall tour in 1981 to promote Blizzard, a year after they've already done it in England. So they come do that. But in the meantime, Sharon had fired Bob Daisley and Lee Kerslake, the guys that recorded the first 2 albums. If you look at the Diary of a Madman album, it shows a picture of Rudy Sarzo and Tommy Aldridge in the band. But if you read all the fine print, it says all songs by Osbourne, Rhoads, Daisley, and Kerslake. So they on it. It's kind of like Whitesnake. Remember that big Whitesnake album? None of the pretty boys in the video actually played on the album, which Tommy Aldridge and Rudy Sarzo were also credited on that album and never played on it.
Wow.
So kind of funny that they both are on the picture of Diary, but neither of them played. However, they came over to the US and toured the Blizzard tour in the band. So they played the Blizzard tour, and then they finally released the Diary album, and Rudy Sarzo and Tommy Aldridge are already in the band. Then they tour with Diary. So they start like in January of 82. Yeah. January of 82, because the album came out they released the Diary at the same time in the US and England, unlike they did with Blizzard. So Diary comes out like in November. And by the way, I bought it like right when it came out. So I was like, cool. I was a cool kid in school.
You bought Diary?
I bought Diary before.
Did your mom see the cover?
I didn't hold it up.
Oh.
I just went to the store and paid it and put it in the bag because I had some money to go to the record store.
So why didn't you show it to your mom?
Oh, because she would have freaked out. Yeah, she saw it eventually. She saw my Iron Maiden albums, and she'd be like, Jeremy, should you really be listening to that?
Oh, the guilt. Lovely.
Like, yeah, Mom.
So what was on the cover that your mom didn't like?
Well, he looks like a madman, right? He's got blood all over. His hair's all crazy. There's a cross, an upside down cross.
Yeah.
There's a dead cat or something. I don't remember. But anyways, so I was going to the store planning to buy Blizzard of Oz, because every day going to school, we'd listen to Blizzard of Oz. We had someone had a cassette on the bus.
Oh.
And we'd listen to it. Well, when I get to remember, no internet. You don't know there's a brand new album out. So I go to the record store. It was Old Northtown Mall in Spokane, because this is when I lived in Montana. We came clear into Spokane. And Northtown, by the way, John, it used to be like a shopping center. It wasn't a covered mall. It was just like a separate little center. So there was this record store that was actually downstairs in what's now the bottom of Northtown Mall, but there was a record store down there.
Down in where Bumpers was?
Yeah. Yeah. And that was all open air, right? There was a hole, there was you'd walk downstairs in the parking lot and there's this lower part, probably flooded like crazy.
I bet it did.
But anyways, I go in there planning to buy Blizzard, but there's this whole cutout. There's a new album out. And so I bought this new Diary of a Madman album, took it to school. And of course, I was a big man on campus because no one had seen it, and I just kind of hold it up. And, everyone thought it was really cool. So anyways, where am I going with all this, John? Okay, so the album came out in November of 81. They start the tour like in January. And so in March, Randy Rhoads. Oh, okay. Let me get ahead of myself. In February, Sharon Arden, before she was Sharon Osbourne, Sharon Arden, brother of David Arden, daughter of Dawn Arden, who, by the way, managed a little band called Black Sabbath, and had managed Ozzy for years. So when Ozzy left Black Sabbath, Dawn Arden kind of puts Sharon in charge of Ozzy. She's on Ozzy watch. Make sure he doesn't do anything stupid like kill himself or whatever, right? That's what she's doing. She's kind of managing Ozzy.
He's pretty distraught at this time, isn't he?
Pretty distraught. He'd been fired from Sabbath. Okay. Now keep in mind, 79, he's really distraught. Once he gets together with Randy and Bob and they make these albums, I think he's feeling pretty good because that first album took everyone by surprise. Diary came out, everyone loved. I mean, these were huge metal albums. I mean, these were more successful than anyone thought they would be. So in February, Sharon announces, guys, we are going to record a live album of Sabbath tunes. And there was about a mutiny, right? Randy says no, because Randy was never a Sabbath fan. Randy was into Bowie. He was into Alice Cooper. He was into the glam stuff.
Right.
Not a fan of Sabbath.
Was it New York Dolls he was into too?
Probably. He looks like he was, but he was more into the glam scene for sure. And Quiet Riot was very much a glam type band if you see the early stuff from the 70s. But Randy did not want to do it. Tommy didn't want to do it because they both felt like, especially Tommy. Tommy had been in Black Oak, Arkansas. He had been in the Pat Travers band. He'd played, he already had some cred. And they're both like, we've established ourselves with these two really respected albums. We don't think we should be doing Sabbath stuff.
Sabbath covers.
They didn't want to do it. Well, because the only reason they wanted to do it for two reasons, right? Well, they wanted to make money. They thought there was a chance to make money, and there was something with the contracts for all of the members of Sabbath. There was like a lapse of their licensing or something. So this would be good for everyone, even the Sabbath guys. They stood to make money from an album. But I think just what we know about Sharon, I think they really wanted to stick the knife into Sabbath because Sabbath was planning to do a live album with Dio. Dio had just come in 80. And so Ozzy winds up ultimately beating them to the punch by about a month. So think about this. In October or November of 82, there's a brand new Sabbath album that's Ozzy Osbourne, Speak of the Devil. And then a month later, there's Black Sabbath's Live Evil, which is all live Sabbath stuff too. So it was a way to make a little money, but I think also to kind of
beat them to the punch,
kind of humiliate them, embarrass them, that sort of thing. But okay, let me catch up where I was. So at the beginning of of 82, when they announced they're going to do this live stuff, Randy doesn't want to do it. Tommy doesn't want to do it. Rudy is like, well, I need the job.
Rudy's
right?
kind of agnostic. I don't think he's ever said a bad thing about any of the bands he's been in. He's been in a lot of bands.
I agree. 100%. I completely agree. And he didn't want it, but he did side with Randy and Tommy and said, hey, if they're not comfortable doing it, I don't want to do it. Right. And Ozzy got really mad. So this was a big deal. And it was a big blowout. And here's what's sad, because you don't know what's coming in a month and a half, right? People don't know that by the end of March, Randy Rhoads will be dead, right? Because I wonder, everyone would have been nicer to each other, probably. But from the sounds of it, Ozzy was quite upset with Randy. He's upset with the rest of the band. And so finally, they all just say, Randy says, okay, fine. We'll do the live album, and then I'm going to quit. I'm quitting after the live album.
Really?
Yep. That was the deal. And so I don't know if they ever, to be honest, if they were still kind of not getting along, because they're in the middle of a tour now, January, February, March. I think it was March 25th when he was killed. And it was shortly before that Ozzy punched Randy. Okay, that's pretty much common knowledge. He actually punched. Randy's like 110 pounds.
Yeah, Randy's tiny.
Little guy. So anyways, they were not getting along. Tragically, he dies. And so now this whole plan for they never did record all the Sabbath tracks. They had 3 tracks that Randy used to play live. So at the end of the set, they'd do Children of the Grave, Iron Man, and Paranoid. Okay. So there were recordings of Randy playing those 3 songs. And so then after the dust settles, after a few weeks or months, they took like a week off. And then they bring Bernie Tormé in from England, who had been playing with Ian Gillan, who is a very blues-based guitarist, not a Randy Rhoads style player at all. But they bring him in, and he was always supposed to be just a stopgap. He was never supposed to be the guy. And he basically, as a favor, comes in and plays a handful of dates.
So when does Brad Gillis come in? Brad
Gillis comes in like middle of April.
So
end of March, it's like 2 weeks, right? There's like a 2-week window where Tormé comes. Someone had seen Brad Gillis. I used to know the guy's name, Preston. It was Pat Thrall, who played with Pat Travers and had played with Tommy Aldridge. Preston Thrall, I think, is the guy's name. He saw Brad Gillis playing in a band called Rubicon in the Bay Area. And he was playing, it's a cover band, and they happened to be playing Flying High Again. That was the popular Ozzy song at the time.
Right.
And apparently he played it really well, and they played like maybe another Ozzy song. So he's already playing like 2 Ozzy songs. And this Preston gets a hold of Ozzy's folks or whatever and says, hey, there's this kid in San Francisco named Brad Gillis that you got to get. So, it's a typical story. He gets a call on a Sunday from some guy with a British accent claiming to be Ozzy Osbourne. And at first he's like, yeah, right. But it really was him. And he said, yeah, fly out here to New York. He's giving him a list. He's telling him, I want you to fly out here next weekend, blah, 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 blah. So this is all happening. Bang, 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 bang. So fast. He has to literally go out and borrow or buy the albums. And he's got like 3 days to learn all the set list, flies out, doesn't even have money to pay, the cab. He has to go in and get someone from the entourage to come out and pay for the taxi. They put him in the room. They lock Rudy in a room with him to teach him all the songs. He's been listening to him, so he's kind of learning them. So basically, from the time he gets the phone call till he's playing live, it's like a week or a week.
Right. Wow.
And
that is scary.
Yeah, he starts playing like middle of April. I saw him like middle of June. So when I'd seen him in 1982 in the Spokane Coliseum, it was like middle of June. Brad Gillis was playing guitar. So he had already done it for like a month when I saw him. But so now they're starting to talk about this. It's back on the burner now. We want to do this live album. We got Bradley now. We can do it. And so they book the Ritz in New York City, which is a very kind of Rudy Sarzo described as kind of like a Latin ballroom, very ornate, kind of like when you and I went to see Wishbone Ash.
Oh, okay.
Just a very Art Deco type, building, small. So when you hear this album, if you're thinking a big Ozzy show, it wasn't like that at all. They were on a small stage. It only holds like 1,000 people. So it was very small. Brad and Rudy were in tight right in front of the drum riser, and Ozzy's right. Ozzy's wearing a pair of sweatpants, and he's got a folding chair with a lamp on it with lyric sheets down on his. So it was not about a show. It was about a recording. Right. Gotcha. And here's what people forget. In August of that summer, Ozzy shaved his head.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Do you remember seeing pictures of that? Yeah.
That shaving heads was not common when I grew up. No one did it.
And everyone was kind of freaked out because that was just weird.
The only person I remember having a shaved head was Telly Savalas.
Yeah. So he's playing at the there's an old clip from Night Flight where Ozzy is being interviewed shortly after. You know how when you get a buzz and after a month or two you get the kind of shaggy
double,
throwing in stuff. That's what he looks like, right? And that's basically what he would have looked like at the Ritz for these shows, right? However, if you look at all the cover art, he's got a wig on and, he looks like the Ozzy we're used to seeing. But they record this over these 2 nights. And I always get in trouble when I say this because, you're not supposed to say anything about Randy Rhoads. And I love Randy Rhoads. I think Brad Gillis plays the Sabbath stuff a lot better than Randy did.
Oh, you do?
Oh, big time. Yeah. And so here's the thing. Randy wasn't into it, and you can tell. I mean, I just don't think his playing sounds as good. Where to me, when I hear Brad Gillis play it, I think he's a Sabbath fan. I think he just likes that music, and he just had a really killer. He was a little crazy on the whammy bar, but that was the style back in the early 80s. Remember that?
Oh, yeah.
So, but I think it shows with Brad that he really liked that music more than Randy did. I think he did a great job. But they record the 2 nights. Here's where it gets funny. So these guys all get together. They fly out from Los Angeles. That was kind of home base for Ozzy. So they're all, and I think at one time they all just lived at Ozzy's house. They had kind of a house there, and they all lived there. So they all fly out. They had 5 days in New York to learn 70 minutes of material. And you got to figure they probably all knew 3 or 4 Sabbath tunes. So they probably already knew 10 or 15 minutes worth, I'm guessing. But they had to learn 70 minutes of music. And here's what pissed them all off. Ozzy wasn't even there. Ozzy didn't even show up till a sound check the day of the first.
Oh,
Didn't even show up. Didn't know the words. He was not ready at all. And so here's the dirty little secret about that album. Most of the vocals were completely redone in the studio after.
really?
Yep. The music wasn't. In fact, Max Norman, who was the engineer on the first two albums, engineer/producer on the first two albums, he made them on one of the days. I can't remember if it was the 26th or the 27th. He made them play a full show with no one in the empty building. He says, we're going to record the whole show just for safety's sake. And I think he said like 3 or 4 of the songs that you hear on the live album are actually from the empty hall. They just added crowd noise.
Gotcha.
But what they had to do is go back and redo a lot of the vocals. But the music, I don't think they messed with the music much at all. In fact, one of the funny stories is when they were getting ready for it, Sharon said, guys, don't worry about Iron Man, Children of the Grave, and Paranoid, because we're going to use Randy's cuts for those on this live album. So don't worry about it. I mean, you can play it for the show. People will want to hear it, but don't spend any time practicing those. So they didn't. And of course, you know what happened. They wound up using those because they decided, they say it's out of respect for Randy, but I think it's out of a payday. They said, no. We're going to save the Randy stuff for later because we have live shows of Randy. That wound up being the tribute album from 1986, 4 years later, that they released. So they saved the 3 Sabbath tunes that Randy played on for that. And then they said, oh yeah, we are going to use those 3 songs, guys. And Rudy was like, because he's just beside himself because he thinks it sounds so bad. I mean, when I listen to it, I think it sounds pretty dang good, but no one is happy with those 3 songs because they weren't expecting them to be keepers. But I think they're great. I mean, it's a tight band. I mean, they sound really good. Adam says, imagine if Randy played the Speak of the Devil album. I think that would have been cool, but Adam, I also think that I like the way Brad played the Sabbath stuff. Just because I think he dug it more than Randy did. It would have been interesting though. Now I would have loved to hear him play the whole thing, but Randy, per Randy, that was going to be the last thing he did with Ozzy was the live album. But yeah, that would have been awesome to see that. Absolutely. So let's see, November it comes out.
So there's no tour because it's a live album, right?
Well, so here's what's funny, and I got myself in trouble here a few years back because I had to do some digging on this. So there is an MTV concert. Remember when MTV used to do their concerts every Saturday night?
Yeah, it's cool.
So there was an Ozzy concert, which was from the Diary of a Madman tour. So it was in Southern California, and it's the Diary set, right? So they're doing all the Ozzy songs, and then they do like 3 Black Sabbath songs. That's what they would do on the Diary tour. Well, when they released that as a video, this was before DVDs, but as a VHS, they called it Speak of the Devil. But it wasn't Speak of the Devil, which is all Sabbath, right? It was a recording of the Diary of a Madman tour, but they called it Speak of the Devil. And then here's what I did not know. They did in fact do a short tour in like the fall of 82 called the Speak of the Devil tour.
Wow.
But it was basically the Diary of a Madman set because they weren't playing all Sabbath tunes. The only album that's called Speak of the Devil is that live album of all Sabbath tunes. But then they did have a Speak of the Devil tour in the US. I don't think it was outside of the US. And by the way, Rudy Sarzo had left. So
And he went to
Quiet Riot.
Right.
So here's a funny story. On the way back, after they've recorded Speak of the Devil, on the way back, they're all flying back. Ozzy's not there. It's Tommy, Brad, and Rudy. It sounds like they got to be pretty good buds. I mean, it makes sense that would be the case. In fact, Rudy and Tommy wound up playing together in Whitesnake later on. But as they go back, Brad says, "Hey, check out this. I've been working on this. It's secret." Right? So he plays them a demo of Night Ranger that no one was supposed to know about. And then Rudy says, "Oh, yeah? Check out this. I've been working on this. No one's supposed to hear this." And so then he's playing them Quiet Riot stuff that he's been working on secretly. So as soon as they get back, basically they both leave. Mm-hmm. So when they do this Speak of the Devil tour towards the end of 82, they had Pete Way, who was in UFO, was playing bass. I think Brad might have played a little bit, but here's what people don't realize. Jakey Lee came in and actually played, I think, part of that tour before he then recorded the next album with Ozzy.
Right.
But Ozzy was mad. In fact, backstage at the US Festival in 1983, supposedly he punched or threatened Rudy Sarzo because he was so mad that Rudy had left the band. But
wow.
The thing is, a lot of drama. But the thing is, when Randy died, Rudy and Tommy were done. They didn't really want to do it anymore. Brad was there because he was hired and he had a job to do, right? But he said everyone was bummed the whole time. So it just wasn't a fun situation for anyone. And so they all left and did their own thing. And yeah, the Ozzy camp has pretty much just disavowed that album because they just think that the only reason they did it was contractually they owed Jet Records this Live Sabbath album. Mm. When Randy died, Randy didn't want to do it anyways. He said he would do it. He died. He never was able to. So I think it was like, I don't know. No one was into it. So have you ever heard Speak of the Devil, the whole album, John?
I have not heard it.
It's hard to find.
Is it on Spotify?
It's not on Spotify. No. Oh, wow. I have a CD of it that I ordered years ago, and I had the cassette that I had. But you can't. They don't want you to have it. I mean, it's not anything that the record company pushed. I mean, you can still buy it on Amazon or something. It's kind of expensive if you can find it, though.
So what about this whole process, this album just resonated with you? It seems like it really connected with you on a different level.
I did like it because it's very, it's the quintessential 80s guitar sound. It's, Randy Rhoads' sound was really kind of grindy and it was kind of a cool sound, but Brad Gillis played Mesa Boogies. It was a different sound. It wasn't the Marshall-y sound. He'd had Randy was kind of coming from the 70s. Brad to me is like, it's more the 80s. It's more squealy. There's more pinch harmonics. There's more whammy bar. And then you compare the way he plays it. When you go back to actually listen to the original Sabbath tune. Now, some people, they don't like that. They want to hear Tony Iommi. They want to hear it like it sounded in 1974, right?
They want to hear it played with two fingers.
They want to hear it played with two fingers. That's right. But I don't know. I just love the way Brad plays it, and he zips it up. You can tell he likes it. You can tell he's into it way more than Randy would have ever been. So this is controversial, right? Obviously my favorite for me, Ozzy ended as my favorite artist. Speak of the Devil is the end of it for me, right? I didn't like Bark at the Moon. I mean, it's okay. It's all right. I don't dislike it. Jake is a good guitar player. He played on Bark at the Moon. He played on Ultimate Sin.
Oh yeah.
And he's good. He's talented. Don't get me wrong. But, especially by the Ultimate Sin, where Ozzy is dressing like B. Arthur,
he's wearing these big caftans with these gigantic shoulder pads.
Yeah, he's got these big robes on and sequins in his hair. And it's like, dude, what happened? It went from being something cool, those first two albums, and then even the Diary, it was pretty raw and it was rocking. And then Bark at the Moon got a little wimpier and watered down. And then it just, that was it for me, right? The first two albums were huge for me. So I don't know. It just, and this is not an exaggeration. My sophomore year in high school, I listened to Blizzard or Diary, or maybe both, every single day.
Wow.
Of my 10th grade. That is not I'd come home from school and I'd listen to one of those albums all the way through. That was just, that was a big deal to me. So I started the 10th grade in 82. Randy Rhoads had just died like at the end of my 9th grade, and I was all bummed about that. Mm-hmm. But that's a really good album to me. And so in the hierarchy, right, you got Randy Rhoads. He's the top dog in the Ozzy camp. And then to me, and most people will never say this, but to me, the second one is Brad, even though all he ever played on was that one live album. I like
even more than Zakk Wylde.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I like Zakk, but I just, it lost the magic for me. So I think Zack's awesome. I think Jakey Lee was awesome, but it wasn't the same. And what made that band magic wasn't necessarily Ozzy. I mean, that was part of it. Mm-hmm. But it was just that band that was really tight. And so anyways, it was a great album, hard to find. I'm going to burn you a copy. So
I'd love to have one. I don't have a CD player.
Oh no. Well, we'll do something. We'll do something.
Can you rip me an MP3 and
I'll rip
email it to me?
That's right. Yeah.
I took a Goodwill Industries run the other day and unloaded 2 Blu-rays. I haven't played a Blu-ray in about 7-8 years. So
wow. Well, yeah, last night we tried to watch Harry Potter on a Blu-ray, and it was all scratched up, and we couldn't. So we just wound up going to Amazon and finishing it on Amazon, anyways. But so it's fun.
You didn't take it off and blow on it and rub it on your shirt.
Oh, yeah, we tried all that. Yeah, but it would get to a spot where it just wouldn't even do it. So, anyways, John, I just 40 years ago. First of all, it's terrifying to think that 40 years has gone by.
That's a long time.
That fast. 40 years, 1982. And that was another one that my mom about had a heart attack when she saw the cover of that, because that's one where he's spitting up like the it looks like jelly, green jelly or something, whatever it is. But yeah, my mom wasn't a fan. But man, I sure dug it. Dude, when you're a sophomore in high school, there's nothing cooler than a guy spitting blood up on
guy wearing spandex pants, spewing up blood. What was the one I remember seeing like an ad one time where he's dressed up like a housewife and he's ironing one of his children.
I just saw that. Yes, he's ironing. He's like ironing a kid. I don't remember what that was for.
I don't know what kind of promotion that was for, but I thought this has got to be I was thinking more like Weird Al than I was heavy metal at the time. With that.
I do remember that. Well, he went through a stretch there. There's one video. It just got silly after a while. There's one video where he's like dressed up like J.R. Ewing from Dallas.
Really?
Yeah, he's singing. I can't remember what it was. Something off Ultimate Sin. It just kind of got to be a joke.
Ultimate Sin, was that the one where you had a duet with Lita Ford?
No, that was a little later. So that might have been No Rest for the Wicked. Well, that was it was on the Lita Ford album. I'm not sure that song is actually on an Ozzy album. Close My Eyes Forever. Yeah, that was about 89. Yeah. So, yeah. And he's still at it. What is he? 75, 73, something?
Yeah, he's got bad health. I mean,
he does have bad health.
Not unexpected.
No. So he's probably, knock on wood. Hopefully he'll be around a good long time. But yeah, he's getting up there. But that album is a really good album. When I want to listen to live Sabbath, that's the one I listen to. And that's sacrilege to some Sabbath fans, but I just think it's a really good album and it's awesome. So
cool.
Well, John, I did all the talking. I didn't even
do a lot of talking. I love it. I'm the play-by-play.
Well, thank you so much. It's been so long since we got together. So here's our commitment to our viewers at home, John. We got to do this more often. Yeah. So, and we've got, look, my son is,
yeah.
Hey, Noah, thanks for joining us. He's watching us.
I thought he was referring to me, his dad.
No, my dad.
Okay.
So, I don't know what that picture is, Noah, on your picture. Is that a stuffed animal? It's like a koala bear. Look at that. That's cool.
Or scary.
Anyway, thank you, Noah, for joining in. So the next, I'm gonna tease our next episode. This is one that John recommended, and you know what? I like that you chose this one. You did not choose the obvious album from this band.
And what was it again?
It was U2's Unforgettable Fire.
Unforgettable Fire. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that album.
Call it A Sword of Homecoming. That's one of the songs, but it's called Unforgettable Fire. And, I think people hear Joshua Tree. We've all heard Joshua Tree a jillion times. So when you said Unforgettable Fire, I thought that's a great idea. So that's what we're going to do on the next episode.
Yeah.
That's great.
We'll put some history on it, talk about it a little bit.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us. And remember, you can be a supporter on Patreon for as little as $3 a month. And you can also check out our website at classicguitarrock.com. Oh, I got one more production element to lead us out here. Are you ready?
Let's do it.
Here we go. Okay. So thank you so much for listening. And we will see you next time right here on the Classic Guitar Rock podcast. See you guys. Take care. Bye-bye. Hopefully I'm playing the right one.
Thanks for listening to the Classic Guitar Rock Podcast.
Oh, sweetness.
This is our
like,
big voice guy
subscribe,
named
and
Todd.
share. You can email us at classicguitarrock@mail.com.
We're not ordinary people. We're morons.
We'll see you for the next episode of the Classic Guitar Rock Podcast.
All right. See you, John. Bye-bye.
See ya.